Welcome to the HIT podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. This week's episode will be no exception. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, I bring on my friend, the lovely Cindy Washburn. Cindy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Toby. How are you?
I'm doing really well as well. Thank you. You are from a little company called TruHu that gets a mention on this show week in and week out because not only do we personally use you guys here at Montage and put you in with all of our clients that are interested, you're also a friend of the show. So thank you very much for being on. Cindy, do you mind just giving the audience just a real quick recap on who you are and what you guys do?
Yeah, thanks, Toby. We're excited to be here as always. TruHu is an internal communication software solution. So we really provide a lot of communication, not only about benefits year round, but whatever those employees need to stay connected to the company and really take the advantage they can of all of the wonderful benefits that their employer provides for them.
Yeah, and I think that, so my thought about this time of year is, hey, look, schools have just let out. 4th of July is right around the corner. We're in summer travel season, and some employers might have a travel assistance program. And by the way, you probably do, even if you don't know it. It might be tied to like your life or disability, but a lot of the carriers throw that in there. You might have an expanded one. You might have like a tickets at work, gateway rewards sort of partnership with one of those companies that gives discounted theme park tickets and rental cars and all those sort of things baked into your employee benefits platform. And the thought is, if we can be intentional about the timeliness with which we kind of drip market these things out, that's a great way to boost employee appreciation. You go, hey guys, I know we talked about this at open enrollment, and a lot of clients have a calendar year health insurance plan. So it's like, when did you talk about this? October, November? Guys, it's late June, right? So you can use this as an opportunity to do something I think is a good idea anyway, which is grab bits of your benefits portfolio that might be the lesser known, the lesser heralded, that get lost in the shuffle of medical and also, the HRIS platform. So all we did was talk about Workday and the change from Cigna to Aetna. And it's like, all right, well, people maybe missed the, ticket discount program or maybe missed the travel assistance. And also, you can't tell people enough. I think that reminding people of the great benefits they have is a cool thing to do kind of throughout the year. So the theme of the episode I wanted to cover today is you can make your benefits have a higher ROI and a higher appreciation with your employees by simply communicating them regularly and even communicating them intentionally. As I mentioned, times of the year, right? Like, hey, listen, now's a great time to talk about some of these ticket programs. But when I talk about employee communication and drip marketing the benefits, Cindy, do you know the first name that comes to my mind?
TruHu?
It is TruHu. Funny you should say that. So I think that it's just a tremendous vehicle for doing that. And so I want to talk about the idea in general, but also kind of how maybe folks can do this if they don't have TruHu and just the idea of communication, maybe some stats around communication, and then what TruHu itself can do, right? So like, talk to me a little bit about when I lengthily set the table with all this sort of like benefits drip communication and the idea of all that. Where does that take your mind to?
I think one of the things you mentioned is exactly where my mind goes first. A lot of employers and employees hear about these discount programs or additional benefits that they get, but it's during open enrollment or it's just during that end of year push when everything feels a little hectic, when everything is a little hectic. So hearing that, I think one of the things we talk about at TruHu as communication experts that we cannot undersell enough is communication. Education is repetition. So get in front of your employees pretty frequently so that they can hear maybe when they're able to hear and absorb that information and not just drinking from the fire hose during open enrollment. So I also think that something that we hear on our side quite a bit from our human resources administrators, from our employer partners, is that when employees didn't realize like, oh, we have a discount program. You can get, any Six Flags tickets for X amount. Or, hey, did you know that we have these great access to corporate benefits for hotels and travel? When I hear our employer partners talk about employees saying, I had no idea and I missed out, I could have used that, that would have been really helpful. That is something that really sits with people and feels kind of icky, because they're like, we put these things in place for our employees to really take advantage of. So, as much as possible, either having an easy place for employees to go and pull that information when they need it, wherever they are, or, reminding them going into this time of year with holidays, with vacations, with graduations, that there's a lot of different opportunities for them.
Yeah, and part of me wanted to like start in by asking you, do you see a difference? But then part of me wants to reference a study and then ask you that question, right? So Unum did this big meta survey, a few years back at this point, but what they did was they looked at the benefits objectively, like the actuarial value of the healthcare. What's the deductibles? What's the copay? What's the actual strength of the health insurance portfolio? And then they objectively looked at the communication strategy, right? How well or poorly were these benefits communicated to employees? And they did this sentiment study with them. Hey, listen, how likely would you be to move to a competitor for equal pay? How likely would you be to stay here? How likely would you be to recommend our company to a friend, right? So all this kind of like employee satisfaction questions. What they found, unsurprisingly, companies that had the best benefits and the best communication strategy, number one, happiest employees. Companies that had the worst benefits with the worst communication strategy, number four, were least happy employees. But the second happiest employees, the second most loyal, likely to stay employees, had the objectively worst benefits with a really good communication strategy. And so a lot of times I talk to my clients and go, look, I'm not going to set your budget. You are. I don't know if we're going to have great or, less great benefits. We're going to do everything we can to get great benefits. But here's the most criminal thing that we're not going to let happen. We're not going to have you toss away a bunch of money on these objectively great benefits just to pair it with a poor communication strategy to get you the third most happy, the second to last, least happiest employees. What a waste.
It's it's really sad, right? To
Yeah.
think that like that just isn't getting taken advantage of.
So I wanted to ask you then, are you seeing, so when you guys talk about the communication leverage that you bring to the table, are you seeing that kind of impact? Is there anything that you guys have from like a experiential or data or even anecdotal standpoint that shows like, hey man, this really turned this around, or I have a story about that?
Yeah, anecdotally speaking, we often see those communication plans again kind of come to fruition during open enrollment, but the most impactful ones happen year round.
Yeah.
So we will actually work with those HR admins, help them get those drip campaigns coming out, from spring break even to mid-June, when students are getting out of school, when students are making decisions about college. Those are really the times that that information can be a little bit more digestible for employees, because they're not in the throes of beginning of year, end of year. They're really looking at other pieces. I think the biggest piece we see and hear is that employees who can access that information where they are, when they are, if it's on their phone, because hey, that's the price of admission for being an adult these days. So employees who have easy access to that information, and then those little nudges throughout the year with those campaigns, really do take advantage and feel more connected, because they can see that their employer is really trying to get that information in front of them, and not just checking a box of yes, we have this, but really wanting employees to take really good advantage of those pieces. So what we see at TruHu is that when messages go out, not just text, not just email, but when we're hitting those multiple channels, making those microsites available to employees, that they genuinely do feel more connected. They have, a better connection to not only their employer, but also the benefits they get.
Yeah, I think that, one of my favorite expressions is the best way to teach a person nothing is to tell them everything, right? So sometimes when you give people the 52-page booklet, they're not going to take away anything, right? And so for you, it's your job to peel out, again, digestible, bite-sized, drip, bits of that and do it constantly and consistently. And I think that we can all agree that, from a premise standpoint, that's a good idea. And from a practice standpoint, I want to ask you about kind of best practices in that campaign.
Yeah. Best practice is always pushing out on multiple channels because there's always going to be an employee who doesn't like getting that text or really has given you an email address that they're never going to check. So, multiple channels, let your employee choose how that communication best reaches them. I think the other best practice that we see in here, communication campaigns throughout the year can look and sound like a wonderful idea in January, February. Where I see employer admins struggle the most is not scheduling those.
Mm.
Make it easy. You can literally schedule those messages to go out, whether you're using TruHu or another source. It's really easy to schedule those so that they're hitting inboxes when you want them to hit inboxes
Yeah.
and text inboxes rather than, trying to do that as an afterthought or just one more thing throughout the year. I think the other best practice is repetition, repetition, repetition,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all know that that's how people
I think
learn.
the other
So
best practice is repetition, repetition, and repetition.
that's wonderful, Toby. Repetition is such a great practice. Yeah,
I
totally.
think that no, in seriousness, I think that's a cool idea though, because in talking about scheduling this out, I'll circling back to the other point where you enter the year with a bunch of just gusto and you think I've got all these highfalutin plans for the year, and as you said, sometimes you get into the year and they maybe fall apart. But if you have an afternoon in January when you're still full of new year, new goals, and you can spend, like you said, a couple hours just scheduling out your year and your campaign and what you intend to do. And then, of course, ad hoc if you wanted to add to it. So maybe it's June and you just saw this amazing episode of the H.I.T podcast with the amazing Cindy from the amazing TruHu, and you think, wait, that is a good idea. I should push out about our ticket discount program or our Six Flags, whatever the case is, right? Then you add to it, right? But at least you have a framework that you sketched out in January that's a minimum of, whatever, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 outreaches.
Yeah. And it doesn't even take 2 hours. I mean, having a template message, popping in those pieces, putting in a link to what you need, or even just referencing, hey, in your TruHu portal under additional benefits, this is all here for you. So I think the piece of that I know we've talked a lot about some of like the tickets and discounts, but I think the other piece that I really have seen elevated in the past month or two, May was Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies talk about their EAP offerings
Yep.
and other employee programs. So, sprinkling those in
Yeah.
because there's also a lot of opportunity there for will preparation, caregiver help. There's
Yep.
tons of things that these benefits can really bolster for the employees year round, and getting in front of them is great.
Okay, so yeah, you're talking about the EAP that has oftentimes has the will prep, and then it leads me to think about when you said mental health, reminding people about the telehealth, perhaps, right? That they have as a part of their benefit. Hey, you can FaceTime, including with a mental health provider, or even cool stuff like, hey guys, if you're joined on the FSA, don't wait till the end of the year because of the use it or lose it. Did you know sunscreen or this bandit, whatever type of stuff might come up, or reminding the people that have the dependent care flex because now it's summer camp season. So maybe you want to spend your dollars on that, right?
So smart. Exactly. I always call summer the season of injury because everybody's out
Yeah.
and about. So,
Yeah.
having the first aid kit stocked, knowing that, yep, I have my HSA, FSA funds. So when we need to go get the crutches or the air cast for the kiddos who got hurt during baseball, like all of that is, those are things that, you don't always think about when you're caring for someone else. But yeah, take advantage of what you
No,
can.
okay. So I was doing an open enrollment meeting explaining to people that if you have the accident insurance, and I forget if it was a Unum or MetLife or Aflac or whoever it was, you could file a claim, right? And it's everything from urgent care, an x-ray, whatever. And I get off the stage and my colleague is like, hey, when you blew your ankle out 2 months ago, how easy was filing a claim? And I was like, bro, can I tell you? I didn't even remember to file a claim. I completely forgot we have the accident program. So even reminding people like, and the cool thing about TruHu is you can get kind of specific about the segments of your population, right? So maybe you don't want to send a all staff email reminding people, hey, if you have the accident program, upticks in summer camps often leads to accident or whatever you're trying to highlight. You can grab just that subsect of your population quite easily and send them email, text, whatever, all multi-channel comms you want to send those guys, right?
Completely. And that's one of the actual, when you were asking before about best practices, one of the best practices is targeting the communication to people not only who have that access and can best use it, but when you are sharing that with people who don't have access to that or maybe aren't part of that plan, it creates confusion. It
Yeah.
creates more phone calls, which is the exact opposite of what you want. So target those communications based on plan type. It's really simple to do within TruHu. It's literally like click, click, and then you can segment that communication to exactly who it needs to go to.
Yeah, so I love what we're talking about, which is how like TruHu can make it easier. But even if you don't have TruHu, just these ideas and these best practices where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
drill down and maybe pull a list from your HRIS platform or do whatever you do. But this idea of being thoughtful periodically about the various benefits you have, how does that map onto where we are in the year, and how can you get a good kind of thoughtful communication strategy to employees to ultimately again boost that ROI, boost the appreciation of the benefits, honestly the appreciation of the benefits department, right? So now HR is going to start to get seen, I think, in a more positive light.
Well, sure. Sometimes HR gets a bad rap of, like, oh, I gotta go talk to the principal's office. That's not at all the case. They're really there to make sure the employees are having a great experience and providing all of those things. So whenever employees have questions, making sure that they know who to go to for those benefits questions as well. And having those communications in front of them throughout the year is just going to help them recognize that Toby's not the bad guy in HR. He's not the fun police that I hear
No,
some
well,
of
I,
our
I I might be
HR
the
folks
fun
say.
police, but not because I'm just writing you up. Because I'm reminding you, we have a gym discount program, and you're trying to get into your swimsuits, boys and girls. So, reminder, we have this part of our health benefits, right? Or we have your membership to Care is paid for if you go through your Kaiser Permanente app or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And having well-rounded, holistically healthy employees is a benefit for everybody,
Yeah.
right? You're healthier at work, you're healthier at home, you're happier at work. There's just all upside.
I agree, and I think that's a great place to get out. Cindy Washburn from TruHu, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you guys as well. That's all the time we have for in this week's episode. Thank you to our sponsors, Rula, Excel Health, Montage Insurance Solutions, and the aforementioned TruHu. We're blessed to be here. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next week. Join us every week, and until next week, make this the best week yet.